G'day everybody, welcome back to MotoPG. Very special one today. I've got an absolute legend of Australian motorcycling with me, Mr. Stephen Gall. And we're here celebrating your book launch. This isn't really the launch, essentially. It's part of a rolling roadshow, I assume. Tell us about the plan. Where are you going from here?
Yeah, well, we've got many opportunities coming up in the future for the launch of the book. But we did an initial launch last year at the Supercross down in Melbourne, which was a pre-launch, and that went really well, a lot of media coverage. So it's gone well. It's gone better than I thought, actually, and the book's turned out fantastic, so I'm very happy with it.
It's beautiful, and it's huge. Just grab it so that everybody on camera, if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll be able to see it. Those listening on the podcast can't, but it's huge.
Yeah.
And it's full of pictures, so motorcyclists will like it.
Yeah, it's 300 mil square, just about 310 by 300, and 328 pages, 28 chapters, full of glossy photos, and plenty of other opinions from other people too, which is making it special.
Yeah, that's really cool. Let's start with, where can people get it? How do they get hold of it?
Well, at the moment, noeasyway.com.au is our e-commerce site. Also, MX Store will sell it online. Yep. And really soon, you can get it from gotheracracing.com.au, which is Sam Moore's business up on the Gold Coast.
Yeah, okay.
Sam does Fist Gloves, Dixon Clothing, and he's reinvented or restarted the Rat clothing again.
Stuff. That's awesome.
So Vince Cicero has allowed him to sell the Rat clothing, and it's going really well.
That's great. I was going to talk about Vince a little bit later, but I need to start us on a slightly sad note. You're probably aware we lost Jan Blizzard last week. Jan and her husband Arthur, huge names in motorcycle racing, particularly in New South Wales. Arthur's work with motorcycling, or the Auto Cycle Union of New South Wales, which then became Motorcycling New South Wales, and also their involvement in the St George Club. Arthur passed away a number of years ago, but we lost Jan last week. And Jan had remained a volunteer with the St George Motorcycle Club forever. Really. Tell us about your history with Arthur and Jan, because they were instrumental for you early on too, weren't they?
Oh, they certainly were, and very special, particularly Arthur, and of course Jan's by his side the whole time. But back in the day when I was going from the Illawarra Mini Bike Club and looking to go into the St George Motorcycle Club, my father was a little bit negative on motorcycle, particularly racing. He wasn't going to let it happen. So Arthur sat him down and talked to him about it and how safe it was and what he could do for it. And he made it happen. Arthur made it happen for me with my father. So, my first race meeting with the St George Club, I did really well. And the first open event, I did really well. And so it went from there. But Arthur was the guy that really got it started.
And those two really set the tone for that club. That club's been instrumental to this day, bringing junior riders through. Centre Aegis is one of the latest examples. Jacob Rolston, these boys that are riding overseas now in Grand Prix classes, all came through St George. And that's a fantastic legacy that they've instilled in that club that continues on. So
certainly is.
Now we're at Tripaloo's, the wonderful Tripaloo's bike shop here near Liverpool. This is the area you grew up in, pretty much. So you're a Menai boy. Tell us about your upbringing and the property you grew up on and your introduction to all things with wheels and motors and how that led you into motorcycling.
Yeah, it's an interesting story because we were at Menai, on the edge of Menai and Illawong actually, and right near the Alfords Point Bridge, which is, not too far from here, that's for sure. And back in the day, I sort of had no interest in motorcycling, but a school friend of mine, a guy called Brian Long, he had a mini cycle and he said, ride this mini cycle, Stephen. And I rode it and went, oh, wow, this is fun. I want to do this. And then another guy who's a great friend who did preschool with me, high school, everything with me, Lance Turnley. And Lance actually designed the book. And Lance and I rode forever together. But at Menai, I had 11 acres property and we had a dirt track at the backyard. My father was right into dirt go-karts, not racing, but just fun. And we had an oiled dirt go-kart track up there and he had tractors and graders for it. And so I started in go-karts when I was about 5 years of age, and probably why I did Speedway later on. But then the bikes came when I was 11 years of age. So from 11 right through to when I sort of got involved in the Illawarra Club, we would cut with a mower, get on my ride-on mower and cut in a grass track. Lance and I would thrash around there and slide and drift in the grass, then go up the back onto the dirt, and then go-karts and motorcycles. And we had a VW that had no wheels. We used to climb over the top of that. And
On your bike?
On the bikes, yeah. And,
Like trials?
we had dirt at the back, so we did enduro riding as well, trials riding. We played as a young kid, just having fun. And that's really what led me to motorcycling.
I really feel for kids who grow up now in apartment blocks and things like that, just never get the opportunity to experience those things. That
I was so lucky. I really was lucky. My parents had that land, and my father was into Shetland ponies, and he had, I think, 15 at one stage Shetland ponies, and he used to throw me on as a young kid to break the ponies in. And I said, Dad, 1 horsepower is not enough, mate. I want more horsepower.
There's a photo in your book of you and your brother sitting on the motorised cart. Yeah. Thongs, no helmet, sliding sideways, front wheel off the ground. I'm tipping parents these days would just be horrified.
Oh, it's a classic photo, isn't it?
It's brilliant.
Yeah, that's right. I've got no protective gear on whatsoever. But, we never got hurt back in those days. We never got hurt at all, which was pretty lucky, I suppose.
You were just a good driver.
Maybe I knew what I was doing at this. I don't know why, but maybe I did okay at that time. But, yeah, that's a great photo in the book.
Yeah, I flicked through some of the stuff you sent me, and that photo stood out. I was like, wow, that's just that's a classic 60s, 70s photograph in Australia.
Yeah, well, it's amazing how I got that photo, because another mate of mine that lived down the road from me in Menai, a guy called Ian Chegwin, I just saw him recently after not seeing him for like 50 years. And he went, you know what, I got some photos of back in the day. Interested? I went, sure are. And that was one of the photos.
It's actually a good photo.
Yeah, well, Lance has embossed it a little bit, as you do these days, but it's definitely come up really nicely.
Yeah, no, it's really good. And then, so motorcycling came about, and your start was pretty much mini bike clubs. So you started with Illawarra, and mini bike clubs are something very close to my heart. They still exist in New South Wales pretty much, but and in New South Wales we have Minicana, which is non-competition for younger kids. It doesn't really exist anywhere else in Australia. Some of the other states are starting to look at how they can get involved, but I often worry about whether we lose young children that are sort of under 10, because it's all too competitive and it's all too dangerous for the parents. And what are your views on that in terms of competition for younger kids, and whether they should be competing at that age? Or
Well, I have certain views, and the views that I think is that no kid should race under the age of 10 years of age. It should be all Minicana or Gymkhana style events, because they learn how to ride a bike.
Yeah, that's right.
When you go slow riding and do wheelies, you do everything under control, flag bending, whether you take the flag in and out and drop it down again, and hill climbs, different things like that we used to do at the Illawarra Club back in the day.
Yeah.
And it taught you so much skill about the bike.
Yeah.
You see these young kids these days, and they can go fast, but you go to anything tricky, they can't do it. And it's, it's mainly when they're 12 and under. I don't like it, because usually it's the parents racing. It's not the kid racing.
The 50s dads.
Yeah, and I don't like it. The kid has to enjoy themselves. And Minicana should be an Australia-wide aspect that's involved with Motorcycling Australia.
Yeah, I think we do lose a lot of kids in that sort of 7 to probably even up to sort of 15 age year bracket, because Dad's more into the racing than the kid is sometimes, and the pressure that comes with Dad's bought the trailer and the bikes and the big ute to tow the trailer, and it becomes and they feel sorry for the little sister who doesn't get to go to ballet because she gets dragged around to the racetracks all the time, and it's a lot of pressure on a kid.
It is. It's a lot of pressure, and the kid thinks he needs to do it, and usually when they get to 15 to 16, and then other things in life start to come out, and then they leave it, and you lose them. And there's skill everywhere out there, but it's a matter of nurturing that skill.
Absolutely, there's plenty of it. So when did the dream of racing or riding motorcycles in some way for a living become something realistic for you?
Well, for me, back in the day, it was just all fun. I joined the Illawarra Club, like I said, did okay there, and then I joined the St George Club, and immediately, with Arthur's help, got into the club, and I immediately did quite well, quite successful at dirt track, motocross. So I just did it all for fun, and then, a couple of years later, I got into some open events, and then I did well there again. So and other people pushed me on to doing more, and I was just enjoying myself at that stage. So, I was working as a motor mechanic back there for Bruce Jones, who was just at Mortdale, not too far from here either. And Bruce taught me a lot about mechanics back in the day, and how to be a clean, presented person with what I did with work too, as my mum was big on that as well. But that's really what got started. And then that opportunity came up to then get some sponsorship. Harry Macklin from Macklin Motorcycles in Miranda offered some help. And then I thought, oh, well, I'm getting it a little bit easier these days. Let's go on and see what happens. And admittedly, I was doing it for fun, and it wasn't until the end of the 78 when I won the first Mr. Motocross, because I got a third, a second, then I won in 78. And then from there I thought, well, if I'm going to do this properly, I really need to be professional. So I left work and turned professional, and then it just went on from there.
Speaking of that word, professional, I was, when I was a kid, I had 2 posters on my wall. One was Robbie Phillips, and you were the other one.
Well, yeah, that's great.
And I've had the great joy of interviewing both of you now, so thank you for that. But it was one of those things where, and the Mr. Motocross thing was great because Vince Tesoriero, the promoter of Mr. Motocross and numerous other fantastic motorcycling events, Vince was great at promoting the sport. He was great at pulling in sponsors from outside the sport. We weren't relying on bike shops all the time and to fund it. He was great at getting sponsored. But what it meant was we needed to be able to present ourselves in a way that motorcyclists weren't used to doing. And to me, you were the master at that. You were the guy who stood out as not necessarily the clean-cut one, but you were the professional one. You were fit, you always looked good, always presentable. And it wasn't what you expected when you think of what goes on at a motorcycle track. So talk us through that process, because I think that's something that a lot of riders still don't get it right.
No, and I learned a lot of that from Vince. Also, my mother was very big on presenting yourself correctly, being clean, looking good. And I could see that motorcycling had a bad image at that time, at that early stage. And we weren't bikies, we were athletes out there doing something, but we weren't really seen as athletes. And in my own mind, I wanted to change that aura around motorcycling and try to do a clean cut, speak correctly, speak fluently, know what I'm talking about. And yeah, a lot of people do attribute the fact that what I did back then really helped start more professionalism, particularly in motocross back in the day. So I'm very proud of that. Very proud.
And your good mate, Anthony Gunter, back in those early days of Mr. Motocross, you and he were, it's almost as though, he was the black hat. Was that something he was comfortable with? Was that something that Vince sort of got you two guys to play? Because you were good mates.
Yeah,
and,
we were good
and you were
mates.
you were portrayed as these guys that went head, and you did go head to head on the track.
Yeah,
but talk us through that.
We went head to head, but there was always respect.
Yeah,
there was always respect. But we were great mates. But yeah, Vince did play that up, and and that's what they did back in the day with the Bob Jane, Alan Moffat era, and Ian Gagan. They put them on one another, and so they should do more of that today. And even though they may be friends, to say they're battling one another or they're going to take one another out or whatever it might be, but they created that aura around us, and we were at the top end of the game at the particular time, so it really helped.
And Vince was great at bringing the sport. He got Mr. Motocross onto television. It was it Channel 7 that used to broadcast? I can't remember which network. ABC. Yeah. He was able to get the wider public to engage in motorcycle racing, and that's something we don't have anymore. It'd be great to find a way to get that back. But that's another podcast.
Yeah, well, there is MotoGP and different things that is helping that these days,
Yeah. And your mate, Grunt, we lost him to cancer a little while ago. How was that? As someone who's always been obviously so fit, and fitness has been a huge part of your career, both in racing and afterwards, obviously, and part of your training programs that you put together for kids, and we'll get onto the academy. But I've been through a period where I've lost a few friends in the last few years to cancer, and you kind of you just start to I think it gets two responses. Some people either go, what's the point of trying to be healthy? Others double down and go, right, I'm going to go harder. And it's confronting those things. And I think as we get older, and fitness has been a focus for you for a long time. So where did that come from? Was that your mum again?
No, I could just see myself that if I was going to do this, I had to be fit. And I learnt by riding in the early days when I wasn't feeling that comfortable on the track, I needed to be fitter. And it really started for me, and this is where the book comes in. The words on the front of the book, No Easy Way. Well, I went to America in 1980 with Anthony Gunter, and I was at the top of our game in Australia at that particular time. I just won Mr. Motocross for the second time, finished second to Anthony the year before. So we were the two best riders in Australia. Went over to Southern California and had my butt kicked. I was battling to get into the top 10 at a local Californian race. So that told me something. And then in the gymnasium we were going to, I met a guy, Anderson, who started stretching back in the day, and he did a stretching book. He took me through all these stretches, which I still do today, and he showed me all these stretches, but on the wall in that gym were these words, no easy way. And that really stuck in my head, that there isn't any easy way. And back in those days, what showed me in America that I wasn't good enough, well, I needed to get better. So in America, I learned a lot about technique, I learned a lot about training, stretching, recovery, things like that in the early days when not much of that was going on. So then I went back every year for 5 years, spent my own money, went over there. That was like my apprenticeship to motocross. And, I trained, I rode hard. And then, like I said, maybe top 10 in the early days. When I left in 85, I was winning some of those races over there because I learnt so much. And all of those techniques I brought back to Australia. And even today, some people say to me, oh, the whole sport's changed. No, it hasn't. The technique of riding a motocross bike is basically the same. Yes, there's some new techniques out there, scrubbing jumps, different things with standing at different points, balls of your feet on the foot pegs, is different things that I would coach now if I was still out there coaching. But what the Lawrences do now and winning the big races, that's basically the same techniques that the Americans used in the early 80s. And it just progressed from there. Some people follow it, some don't as far as the technique is concerned. And some people are cleaner with it than others. Jet Lawrence is the ultimate technique guy. They still do motos nowadays at 70, 80% just working on technique. They just don't go out and ride. They're working on technique the whole time. So when the ante gets up, they still keep the technique correct. And by keeping the technique correct on a motocross bike, you're in the middle of the bike more. So the bike works around you. You're not using much energy. You're making it much more flowing and efficient on the bike. And it's just the way to ride an off-road motorcycle.
Yeah. Do you find, because your career stretched into dirt track, bit of road race as well, Castrol 6 Hours, a podium there. There's not too many riders have managed to cross from motocross at an elite level into road race and done well. There's a handful of exceptions. And probably the benefit for you of being with St George at the time is St George ran dirt track meetings and they ran road race meetings. So that would have made that evolution easier, I'd imagine. So dirt track would have come first, I assume? Yeah,
dirt track was actually the first open race that I did and probably the first club day that I did.
How did the old school dirt trackers cope with you?
Oh, that was an interesting story.
Yeah, I bet.
Because back in the day, of course, it was sliders. Yeah. And, a Speedway bike, slightly different geometry, bit of suspension, gearbox, bit of braking on them. But those boys ran Speedway lines. Yet the motocross boys come in. We had more direct line into the corners. We had brakes a little bit better than them. And we had some great racing in those days. And I got to say that the dirt track boys from back in the day, like the Kevin McDonalds and the Trevor Hunters, which I bought my first bike from Trevor Hunter actually at Stony Creek Motorcycles, my first JT1 Yamaha mini bike, which is the first mini bike that Yamaha brought out. Well, I had one of those. It was a great bike.
That was good, yeah.
And Trevor sold me that bike, but those guys could really ride the slide as well. And when we got amongst them, we were different lines and we had arguments, but it was good racing. And those boys taught me so much. They really did. I got to attribute them to teaching me a lot about riding a motorcycle.
And the funny part is those arguments continue today. There's still people in the dirt track community that want sliders and motocross bikes to ride together, and others that say, no, you need the sliders in one race and the motocross bikes in another.
Yeah, I can see why, but it's
not that there's many sliders around anymore, but there's a few getting around.
You've got to mix it up. It makes it more interesting.
Yeah, no, I agree. The move to road race. So I was going to say dabbled in road race, but that's unfair. That's not an accurate.
Well, I really did. I really did.
Well, you podiumed in a Castrol 6 Hour. I wouldn't call that dabbling. With respect.
But the way I like to explain dabbling is the fact that I was asked by Chris Dixon at the time, who was one of the best motocross riders in the St George Club, and Chris said, "Oh, let's go and do the Castrol 6 Hour in '78." Well, unfortunately, we only lasted 41 laps and the gearbox had a bit of problem in the 750 Yamaha that I was riding. So we pulled out, but the next year I rode with Len Attlee and we rode on an XS 1100 Yamaha, and that was a bit of a step for me to go from a 40 400, 490. No, it wasn't 490 even at that era. It was still 426 or something. At that
the XS
era.
was a big girl.
It was a big girl, and I jumped on an XS 1100, and I'd only get on the bike the week before the race. I never even rode on the road. I didn't have a road license, so I jumped on the bike at practice, and people like Warren Willing back in the day. Warren said, "Stephen, get behind me, follow me around the track and see what my lines are." And that would pick up a second a lap straight away.
Yeah.
Just I knew the lines better. So I had some good people around me. Those road race guys were so good to me as far as looking after me. Dennis Neal and Roger Hayes, and it just, let's go, Paul Feeney, goes on and on. Those guys are all really good guys. Still know a lot of them today. Rest in peace, Dennis. But, there's a lot of really nice men there, and they helped me with this book, actually. A lot of comments in the book as well.
There is. There's a lot of sections. The books, I love the way the book's put together, because there's a story from you, and then there's something that somebody else has contributed.
Yeah, Haddo gives a story.
Haddo's, what a great man Haddo is. He's Haddo's hilarious. But
Tony Hatton, he's a good guy.
He's great. One of the few handful of Australians to win the Suzuka 8-hour, and on a bike that he pretty much built himself.
Yeah.
So he's and a guy who used to ride the Castrol 6-hour by himself.
Yep.
With no teammates.
Yeah.
And he was one of the guys back in those days he was a guy that worked very hard on his fitness too. So seemed to be a bit of a theme with a few of you guys back then. Tell me about Amaroo Park, because in those days the Castrol 6-hour was at Amaroo. I rode around Amaroo a few times, but I never raced around it, and I'm glad I didn't, because the place was terrifying. And you're a motocrosser, so people think motocrossers are used to falling off and taking risks because you do jumps and land on each other and all that crazy stuff. But Amaroo Park was a whole other world of hell. The first time I rode around Amaroo Park, I was just horrified that people rode around there at any great pace, because it was just walls and concrete.
That's right. And I got to tell you that it really did scare me, but because everyone did it, I just went, oh, well, this is what's done.
Yeah.
You had the stop corner, there was a rock wall right in front of you.
Yeah.
You come around onto the main straight, and you're rubbing your shoulders on the Armco on the left-hand side, up over the hill, around the loop there, and there's a dirt rock wall not far off the track. So if you fall down, you finish up in there. And so there really was a lot of dangerous things. And I think that's why, at that stage, I was always pretty conservative with looking after myself. I was always riding within myself all the time. I had very little injury back in those days. So I think that's why I never carried on with road racing, because that may be a question you might come out with, and a lot of people do, is why didn't you chase road racing? Because I think with a limited amount of time I spent on the bike and how well I could do on the bike, I could have gone on to doing that if I had the want to do it. But I didn't have the want, because I thought, I'm in good space with motocross. I'll stick there. I'm making some money, not tremendous money, but I probably could have jumped the fence there and gone road racing and done better.
Yeah. Let's turn to the academy. So Hungry Creek and the early schools back in those days, and they were a week long, weren't they? Used to run these courses that were a week. The kids would come and camp. They'd be fed there, watered, cleaned occasionally, and basically jump in the creek and pretty much live bikes for a week. And some of the names that went through that with you and the academy later on as it evolved into the Yamaha Academy of Off-Road Riding, and there's some phenomenal names that went through your schools. It must be great to look back and see the guys that have come through, because a lot of them became your competitors too. Dacky and Belly and all of those guys.
Not to mention the Troy Barlases and Glenn Allerton. Actually, I was at QR a couple of weekends ago for the Australian Superbike Championships, and Glenn actually won the last race,
in the rain,
which was really good in the rain. And congratulating him. I gave him a book, and he went, you wouldn't believe it. I did so many Dargle camps, and I never knew all of that back in the day, because I never handled the entries.
Well, you wouldn't have known who they were anyway. They were kids.
But so good to think that all those guys came through the academy and learned some basics of riding a motorcycle.
And even Jack Miller was one of your boys.
Yeah, that's right. Jack did a camp up in Townsville, and it was really funny. A few years ago, I was down at the Bend, and my son-in-law was there with me, and I said, "Oh, Jack, excuse me, my son-in-law would love a photo with you. It's okay, Gawley. I'll come back. I just got to give this helmet to someone." He came back in, and he sat him up beside Dale, my son-in-law, took a photo. He said, "Now, Gawley, I want a photo with you." I said, what do you mean? He said, I did a school with you back in the day. And I went, oh, you're kidding. And it was really good feeling that Major Jack Miller did one of my schools. So, yeah, it's
that's great.
It means, these days, it means more than what people think. Everywhere I travel these days, for instance, I just rode to Fink on an adventure bike with Clubby and Lance and a few friends, and Vaughan Style, David Armstrong, who I used to race with back in the day. And everywhere we stopped, adventure bike guys would pull in, they go, golly, I did one of your schools somewhere in Australia, whether it's Tasmania, Gove in Northern Territory, or, the mining towns in West Australia. I travelled everywhere. I did so many kilometres back there in the day in that really nice Toyota van that I drove.
Yeah, you did. Back in those days, I was, early 90s, I was working at Rev's Motorcycle News magazine, which brings back a whole bunch of memories too. But the Off-Road Academy literally went all over Australia. Yeah. It went everywhere. And Yamaha used to advertise it in our magazine. And over the years, I've seen there's lots of coaching schools now in the motocross world. They don't move around like that anymore. There's a couple that do. Most of them have a base that they work out of. Most of them are just doing a one-day clinic for the kids, taking the money. There's a few very good coaches, Craig Anderson and a few of the boys do a really good job. There's others that, I don't know, my personal opinion, they're just taking coin. But there's not really that all-encompassing school that I know of anyway, where people are talking about fitness, about bike maintenance, about getting sponsors and how to look after them, about the financial side of running your team and all of that sort of stuff. I feel like that's missing now.
It is a lot. It's really missing. And back in the day, I thought that was an important part. I wanted them, and we've talked about Tony Hatton before. Well, he came along and taught the fathers the mechanics of the bike to try to make the setup of the bike better, for the riders to be better. So I was always thinking about getting the sport as a whole to be better, not just lining my pockets with money at the time, because what I charge for a week, they charge for a day now.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's pretty incredible. But anyway, there's some good coaches, like you said, out there, but a lot of them are very much into just riding the bike and technique, and not the whole package that I used to try to instigate into my training.
Yeah, it's and it must have been unusual for you too, because you would have had a lot of kids come through your school. I mentioned Belly before, Craig Dack, Ray Vanderberg, Leesky, would have probably all come through your schools and went on to become your competitors. What was that like? How did it feel to be lining up on a gate with all of these kids that you'd taught, and now they're hungry and they're coming after you?
Yeah, no, I expected it. And I got a couple of good stories there. One of them was with Craig Dack. I mentored him a lot in the early days. He lived close to me, to friends of mine, David Hirsch, rest in peace, David. But he's down the street. We used to train together, go to the Kernell Sandhills when there was sand at Kernell. And now it's gone. But we used to run the hills and ride together out there and ride at Menai. And Craig used to say to me, I can't keep up to you when we run together. And I said, Craig, one day, mate, I'll be the one trying to keep up with you. And sure enough, that's what happened. And Craig dominated. He also won 4 Mr. Motocrosses like myself. And, he's been a legend in the sport too, now running the Yamaha team for 27 years or something. He's got 27 or 8 Australian championships to his name. He's done a great job with it.
Yeah, he has.
Yeah.
He has. Was there a point when all these young guys start coming in and you're competing with them and beating them, and then all of a sudden they're harder to beat? Do you remember a point where you decided, or where it became clear that you were reaching the point where it was time to move on and do something else? Was it like a pin drop moment? Or
No, without a doubt, particularly associated with hurting my knees too. I tore the ACL in my knee, firstly in 78, and I just didn't even go to the doctor. I just got it strong myself, and that's when I started cycling.
Yep.
Way back in 78. I've been cycling ever since. But I couldn't run anymore at that particular time. I had to cycle. So then in 86, at Tony Hatton's house, testing the bike for Mr. Motocross, a week or so before the event, I tore the right ACL. And that I started that particular Mr. Motocross series that year, and I could see that the injury put paid to me, because the year before I finished 4th, year before that was 3rd, year before that was 2nd.
Yeah.
So I was slowly going downhill, and of course I lost my confidence. And if it was today, I would have done it differently. because I know more about fixing the body. I know more about knee bracing, of course, that I started knee bracing in Australia in 87. And, there's ways to fix those problems now. But I certainly, in 85, 86, I could see that the end was coming. And that's why I talked to Yamaha, Stephen Cottrell at the time, and said, I'd like to continue on teaching the schools, and can you support me to travel around Australia? And he did that. I did that for 15 years with Yamaha and travelled the length and breadth of Australia with the Yamaha Academy, and that's all in the books now.
And so the next step, motorcycles, gives way to what was potentially almost the first love, riding the go-kart around the dirt track at home. Speedway was the next thing. 4 wheels and an engine and Speedway.
That started because my brother, he got involved in lightweight minis, racing in Amaru Park. He designed his own suspension. He's very...
the midgets, they used to call them.
No, Dean started on lightweight minis.
Right.
Then because he became friend through Selby Suspension, that he worked with Howard Revell, who was a legend speed car driver at the time, he got involved in there, and Howard gave him a drive, and Dean went, oh, I like this. I can drive every Friday or Saturday night.
Yeah.
He started. Dean had a big crash at Kembla Grange Speedway. And when he had that crash, he couldn't afford to be away from work because he was the only guy there with another guy called Phil Golding, who's still a good friend of mine today. And he said, Stephen, would you like to drive the midget? So in 84, right through to the end of 88, we would do just summertime racing at the local speedway, occasionally down to Canberra, sometimes to Newcastle. And that's just a big dirt go-kart. And we did really well out of that. I managed to win the Australian Championship at the end of that speed car career, and that really upset a lot of regular speedway guys because here's this guy that really doesn't travel and has very little experience, and he wins the championship. Well, I just applied myself on the day, and I knew what I'd do at the local track and managed to pull off a win. So I did well that day, but then that led to sprint cars.
Because, of course, you can't do it and not go the whole hog and jump in the big V8s. And
Sid Moore was right into sprint car racing, had the CR&D, and his daughter became Max Dumsney, his wife.
Right.
And he said, oh, why don't you have a drive of Melinda's car? So I got out of that drive, and I had a grin from ear to ear. I've got to do this, Dean. Let's sell a midget and get into sprint cars.
It's funny you say that, because I've known of a few V8 supercar drivers who have jumped in one of those for a go, and they've gotten out and swore they'd never get in again.
Yeah.
Because they can be terrifying.
I hear that, because if you don't get in the right setup car, you've got a difficult track, they can be terrifying.
Yeah.
And for me, it's like putting a 500cc two-stroke on methanol and trying to ride a track with a limited power band, because they're amazing things to drive, and when they're right, you can go incredibly fast in those things.
But they also don't work very well if you're not going fast.
True.
They don't want to turn. They don't want to.
You've got to go quick.
You've got to commit, don't you?
And, some people say to me, Stephen, what's the best buzz you've ever had in your career? Well, I got to say, at Granville Speedway near Parramatta, in a sprint car, wide open into turn 3, completely wide open, just turn into the corner, the wind hits the wing, wings it down, your head turns to the right because of the G-forces. You go through there completely wide open, the engine's grunting. It's just an amazing feeling that I tell people about today. And I don't kid you, if I still had heaps of money, I'd be doing it now.
It's not a poor man's sport,
no,
is it?
No, it isn't, but it's such a buzz.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. Let's talk about your family. So your wife, Gay, you guys met fairly young, and you were together for a long time. 2 children, Alex and Sean.
Yep.
Sean's looking after the knee brace business now, isn't he?
Yep, we gave it to Sean a few years ago, about 5 years ago now. And
Sean's a foot taller than you and built like a brick shit house. Are you sure he's yours?
Yeah, people ask that. Yeah, he's 6'3" and I'm only 5'11". But a lot of Gay's hereditary. They were tall people. So obviously those genes come out in Sean, and I think it was because I was always into fitness and he got into weight training, and his good mates were battling one another, and he is built like a brick, you know what? Yeah. But whenever I want something moved at home, I say, hey Sean, come and give me a hand, mate. He just picks up one-handed and does the job. So good on him.
It's funny, your beautiful wife. It's every time I meet one of the great racers, there's always a strong woman in the background. It feels like you almost can't do it well and balanced unless you have that.
Well, the best way to explain that is that in any successful event, you've got to have a team around you. Whether it's whatever you're racing, whatever you're competing in, you've got to have a team around you. And Gay has been such a strong part of my team over the years. Immediately in the early days of Supercross and Motocross and road racing and Fink Dirt Track, she supported me really well. But then when kids came along and we had a knee brace business and a motorcycle school business where I'd leave for 6 weeks at a time, she would run both of those businesses, still take 2 kids to school, look after young kids. Just amazing woman. So I've got to really take my hat off to Gay.
And sit there and complain that you were away and you weren't helping. And
no, she did a great job. So
some of us are lucky. I want to take you to Motocross of Nations. So obviously we had a huge amount of success the last couple of years with the Lawrence boys and Kyle Webster.
So good.
And I love Kyle. He's I've always been an admirer of Kyle Webster. I think he's one of the more professional young athletes that we have in the sport. And obviously the Lawrence boys goes without saying how good they are. You've been involved with MX of Nations though for a lot longer than people would know. Back before Motorcycling Australia was in a position to even be involved in trying to help get a team together, you were involved. Take us back to the start of that. How did that come about?
That's easy to do. In '84, I think I was third in Mr. Motocross. Yeah, I was third. And I said to Len Williamson, who was very involved in ACU at that particular time. Len was a very good motocrosser back in the day, taught me a lot, actually used to come to my property in Menai and race around the track with me on CZs with leaky carburetors, as they were back in those days, dripping like a 36mm Bing, as the saying used to go. But Len was a great guy, and I said to Len, hey, let's go to the World Teams Championships. So Len did a lot of the work. I provided a lot of the motivation. We went out for 10 years ourselves and raised the money for it all, put it all together. First year in Varberg in Sweden, Trevor Williams and Vaughan Style and David Armstrong and myself with the team. And we started it back in the day. And then I was involved for another 10 years. And then Gary Ben came back from Europe. And Gary knew everyone in the Parc Fermé in the World Championships. So he was the logical guy to take over from me because he knew everyone. He could just go and get a loan of a van or get a bike or whatever it might be. So Gary took it over and has been involved ever since. Gary Ben, amazing. Gary still works now part-time with Craig Dack, with the Yamaha team. He's a legend guy and has done so much for Australian motocross as well, like Craig has. So that's where it started. It started way back then. And the ACU really didn't help us at all back in the day. We raised all the money.
They were never in a position to.
We had raffles. We had all sorts of things going on. We had auctions with riders' clothing, all sorts of things happening to raise the money, to scrape together things to get the team overseas. And then MA got involved and MA started to help to a degree. But still back in the day, money was raised for all those things. Another guy that needs to mention is Mark Lutzich. Mark, amazing. He has put his heart and his soul behind that team since '85 when he first came with Glenn Bell to Goldhoff in Italy, where Craig Dack finished second to Ricky Johnson, one of the races. We finished sixth that year, which was a really good effort. I was the team manager that year, and Lenny Williamson was the juryman. So good memories back then, how we started. And then I always said to everyone, I want to be around when we win one of these Motocross of Nations.
How did you, going into that event in 24, when the first time we won, did you feel like it was possible? Did it feel like there's something going on here and it might happen?
Yes, I did. And even the year before in Ernay in France, because we're going back to this year. Yeah. And I felt as though we could get a win, but because I've been to so many Motocross of Nations and so many things can happen.
Yeah, that's right.
Like,
it takes one injury.
In 17, for instance, I was at Redbud, where the race was just in Redbud on the weekend, around to the American Nationals. And we were leading going into the last race. But 2 corners into the race, Mitch Evan gets taken out, goes to the back of the field. So basically wrote the chances of winning right there. Because Hunter Lawrence was in that team. He was riding really, really good. He won the 250 race. And little story about that particular year, Hunter won the first 250 race. I went up to him and hugged him. Went, "Oh, Hunter, that's unreal." And he looks at me as though, he didn't even know me much. He didn't know that I've been involved for so long.
Yeah.
And it sort of took me back a little bit that he didn't know some history of how this whole thing started.
Yeah.
And but then to win at Matley Basin, it was just Jeff Leask and I, we had tears coming out our eyes. I was happy tears. I just couldn't believe that we won.
Yeah, and then to back it up.
And then back it up last year.
And correct me if I'm wrong, because there's been countries win it twice in a row before, but I don't think anyone's won it twice in a row with the same team.
No.
Is that right?
We did set a new record there.
Right. And again, I had some people ask me, so the first year when you had Kyle in the team, I had a couple of people say to me, do you think Kyle's a good pick? And I said, I think he's a perfect pick. Because Kyle is the master of consistency. He will find his speed and he'll sit on it. And he doesn't fall off very often, which is perfect in those sorts of events. It's exactly what you want. So as for this year, I heard a story, and you might be able to tell me if this is true, I'm not sure, that Jet and Hunter aren't riding this year. Is that right?
Unfortunately, that seems to be the case. Unfortunately, because you've got to understand the American series. It's so difficult. There's hardly any weekends off all year.
Yeah.
And that means not just the riders, but also the teams.
Because their whole team comes, don't they?
That's right. The whole team comes. And it's just difficult. So they wanted a rest. And I wish they waited one more week this year and maybe do 3 in a row. Pardon me. But unfortunately, it's not in concrete, but it seems as though they won't be there this year.
Yeah. Well, fingers crossed they might change their minds. You never know your luck.
You never know your luck.
But we do have some homegrown talent here still anyway.
Oh, without doubt.
There's no shortage of boys that'll be sticking their hands up for those spots. If that's
Jed Beaton's riding really well at the moment, the best he's ever ridden.
Jed's on fire.
Aaron Tanti is coming good at the moment too. He's had a lot of experience overseas and he's really riding well. We've got Jake Cannon in France at the moment with the Bud team that's riding really well, winning some of the AMX races over there, which is the lesser class than the World Motocross Championships. We've got Hayden Minia in America riding for Star Yamaha that's going really well at the moment too. So we've got some good talent in the 250 to draw from.
Yep.
But even though, unfortunately, I think that's still not any disrespect to those guys. It's still a B team, unfortunately. And I hope that the boys can really fire on the day, and you never know.
That's exactly right.
You never know what's going to happen.
And it's the beautiful thing with motocross is all it takes is a good start. And you often see it, a rider that doesn't expect to be winning, all of a sudden they get a good start and they're in the top 3 or 4 when they expected to be mid-pack after the first corner, and all of a sudden you see the light change, the light turn on.
The psychology changes, that's for sure. The want comes in and they go, look where I am. We can do this.
Yeah, absolutely. So the quest goes on to raise money for the MX of Nations team to get overseas this year. What's the process with that? Is there a way that people can help? Where our listeners are pretty good at emptying their pockets when it comes to...
Well, we don't go to a GoFundMe page or anything like that. We don't do that, but... last year and this year, I've travelled to the Australian Motocross Championships called the Pro Motocross Series, and I designed, or Todd Waters helped at T-Dub, designed a green and gold tent, very loud, support Australia, photo of the boys winning in the backdrops of the tent. We saw some merch, some T-shirts and caps, black and green and gold caps, and so we put together some merch. We also do some auctioning at lunchtime at those races and auction off old shirts and old memorabilia that we come up with. So that helps. Of course, Motorcycling Australia helps to a great deal to get their Australian team over there. Yep. We also get donations from some companies. This year, we've got some good companies. Berry Sweets helping this year. MX Stores helped for quite a few years. They're a huge company on the Gold Coast that sell on the online platform so successfully around Australia. They're actually selling my book as well, so that's really nice of them. But it's, there's a lot of platforms out there that are helping out. And there's some donations here and there too that are under the cover that they don't want any be known for that help out, which is really nice because it is a struggle.
And it's an expensive project too.
This year the budget's around $150,000, and if the Lawrence boys came, that means all of HRC has to come. That means there's 2 mechanics, suspension technician, engine technician, team manager, Yeah, there's a big crew. And if you're going to do it properly, you do it properly.
Yeah, that's right.
So we've got that ability now, that raising enough money to do it properly and get everyone there so the team feels like a team, and the Lawrence boys knows that their same guys are there and they can do the job on the track. And it's shown that that's the case the last 2 years. And this year may be a little bit different, but we'll go in with the same effort, the same strength this year, and do the best for the boys, because it's about Australia. It's not about the riders. It's about Team Australia, and it means a lot to me to support Australia and to, something I started. I'm like the granddaddy of the Motocross of Nations, so it's really good to be involved.
Fantastic. I'm going to call Geezer up here. Where is he? Come on, Sean. While Sean's coming up, where can people buy your book, Stephen? What's the best way to get hold of it?
Well, the book's available on the e-commerce site that Lance set up, which is noeasyway.com.au. It's an e-commerce site. You can pay by PayPal or by credit card. MX Store's also selling the book for me online. It's in their catalogue at the moment, you'll see. And really soon, with merch available, and this merch is important too, because Sam Moore, who sell a number of products, Go the Rat Racing, he's brought Rat Racing back out there again, Dixon Clothing and Fist Gloves. Well, Sam nicely said to me, I'll sell the book for you from our e-commerce site. So if you go on to gotheratracing.com.au, there's also some merch. And what he's done is some old Academy designs.
Oh, cool.
So he's got some old Academy designs, put them on T-shirts, put some rats down the sleeve and things like that from back in the day.
The young kids won't even know. Go the Rat was like Oakley back in the days, wasn't it?
It was the big name, wasn't it? So Sam's really into the Rat. And so that's going to come out well with some caps, so people can go in and get a book and some merch at the same time, and help Sam out at the same time, as well as buy my book. And thank you very much, Sam. It's been a big help. So at the moment, those 3 platforms, there's some bike shops that have it. Chris Watson Motorcycles at Stock, he bought a whole lot of bikes. Triple Lou here, Triple Lou Garage, they've got books for sale. And Yamaha shops around Australia have the placards, or don't they, Geese? They've got different things, so they can help steer to the right direction, particularly for my e-commerce site to buy the book. So thanks everyone for thinking of it. It's a great book. It really has turned out well. I'm really, really pumped with it.
It's magnificent. It's done. Yeah, it's come up great. I've just called Sean over. So Sean Goldhawk from Yamaha. Sean, I wanted to drag you up here because I want to talk about the link between Steve and Yamaha, which goes back, geez, Steve, 50 years?
50, is it?
Yeah, it's 50. This is 53rd year now. It's 75. Yeah, sorry. This is the 53rd year. It's been 1975. I got started with Yamaha.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it's been a good run, and I've really enjoyed it because you've been so supportive for so long.
I've personally known you for, 23 years. First met you in 2003 at an ATV launch in Stockton Beach. Do you remember that?
Yep.
And then we went riding together in 2005, the Australian Safari follow-on tour, the Tribe event. So I've personally known Steve for a long time. He's been an absolute pleasure to work with. But can you imagine 53 years with one brand? Has it ever happened before? I don't know. Will it ever happen again? I doubt it.
Yeah, I can't imagine it. It's and I think partly too, riders generally change brands throughout their careers these days too. It's very rare that a rider stays with one brand their whole career, let alone maintains the ability to stay involved with that brand and generate value for that brand, because that's essentially what you've done. Yamaha's maintained their loyalty to you and you to them, and it's because it's mutually beneficial. It goes both ways. It's good for you. It's been great for Yamaha. I can't think of another Australian motorcyclist in any genre that's been able to generate that amount of goodwill and I was going to say publicity, but it's not just publicity. It's far more than that.
It is, because just being involved with Steve and his level of professionalism in everything he does reflects really well on the brand. And just from a personal perspective, asking him to attend events or whatever, he's always the first to stick his hand up. There's never any question. He's always there front and centre representing Yamaha in the best way possible. I've personally learned from him how to operate on that front, and he's just been nothing but a positive for the brand.
Thank you, Jeez. Thank you.
I think it's something that I used to spend a lot of time talking to parents, and they're trying to get sponsorship for their kids, and I used to say it's not enough to go to your bike shop and say, give me $1,000 worth of parts and I'll put your sticker on my bike. That's not how this works anymore. But in truth, it's never how it worked. that was never enough. It was always about what you're going to add to the business of that sponsor, because that's why they're getting involved. It's partly altruism and it's partly a business decision. There's got to be a payoff in both ways. And I think Stephen's professionalism over the years shone through when you were a teenager, and it's just continued. And there's a lot of lessons for everybody in the sport.
And not only that, I remember talking with Stephen Cottrell, who was my former boss, who was a mentor of yours for many years and encouraged you to form the academy back in those days. So when Stephen transitioned from being a rider into being a trainer, he had a van and he drove all the way around the country teaching, coaching kids motocross. But I mean all the way around the country. You did it non-stop. Yeah. And basically after you left, they had to break it down into individual states to cover those territories. But Stephen did it all himself. And that level of commitment where you're willing to just drive and work really hard, that work ethic, the commitment, again, reflects really well on the brand.
So it's essentially what made you successful as a motocross rider. It's the same thing that's made you successful in business and every other aspect of life.
Yeah, it's really nice to think. And I still today get so many people come up to me and say, I did a school back in the day. And it's not about the training, but it's about what I installed into them with professionalism. As an example, Yariv Konsky, HRC owner Honda Racing here in Australia, he said, Stephen, you come to your schools at Two Wells track down in Melbourne, and he said you were always clean cut, the van looked good, you washed it before you came there, the stickers were on the side of the van. He said, that's how I do it today with my Honda Racing team. And other people have come to me and said, I took a lot of your business and your professionalism to my business. So I really feel good about that. It really makes me good that it's not just riding, but it's about holistic aspect of life that I've helped people with.
Sean, while you've got access to our 500,000 listeners, what's going on at Yamaha? What's coming up?
Oh, I can't really talk too much about new product, but we're killing it in sales at the moment in Australia, so that's a good thing. We're pretty much holding the number one spot. Very happy to report the year to date.
And you don't even sell postie bikes?
We don't sell postie bikes, no. Nor does anyone else, I don't think, do they?
No, not really.
No, it's been good for us, recent market trends. So we've got a lot of good promotions and a lot of good dealer partners in the business that are just really working hard. And there is no easy way, is there, Stephen? But
it certainly isn't.
We make it.
Well done. Stephen, thank you. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And
thank you, Dave.
I'm sure our listeners and now our viewers, now that we're on YouTube as well, we'll be lapping this one up. So
thank you very much for the time.
Cheers. Thanks, Keith.
Thanks for the invite.
No worries.